let's learn something really quick.
If you got the time, absolutely. And you got the discipline, there's no question about it.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great practice to put into your everyday life, you guys.
You generally regret the things you don't do, not the things you did do. Let me say it that way.
Mic drop. This was just awesome. I love meeting my guests in person, and it's a whole nother animal, and the energy is just electric. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. Live your best life. You must live label free. What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bringing incredible guests from all over the world, so sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is an author, CEO, psychologist, and an expert on the aging journey. Please welcome Corinne Auman. Corinne, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. And this is actually, I think I've had someone on around your expertise a long time ago when I first started the podcast. And this is like very relevant in my life currently with what your focus is and your business. And I can't wait to dive into it. Why do you consider yourself an expert on the aging journey? Let's start with that.
Sure. Well, I'm on this aging journey, as are you and everyone else.
Yep.
I think sometimes we think about aging as something just old people are doing, but it's not. It's something that we're all doing every single day.
Oh, yeah.
So it is a personal journey, but it's for everybody. I grew up right next door to my grandparents, who had a terrific relationship with, and kind of got my passion for working with older adults because of that. Went on to school and graduate school, got my PhD in developmental psychology, and my specialty is adulthood and aging. So I've taught for a number of years in psychology and gerontology programs at colleges. But then the other piece of it is that about 12 years ago, I stepped out of academia and started my own company in care management. So what we do, I'm kind of the person you call when everything is hitting the fan with your aging loved ones. And we describe ourselves like we're kind of the quarterback of the football team in terms of navigating and coordinating how to care for an aging loved one. And I got into that business again because of that relationship I had with my grandparents, and my mom and her sister became that care manager, trying to organize all the care for their mom after my grandfather passed away. And I kind of watched that journey and was just like, why isn't there somebody that helps with this, that helps you figure out what the resources are and what you can afford and what's available out there? So that seed took me all the way down this road in terms of academic interest, but then into business as well.
No, I think that's a great story and much needed, obviously, because I think that it brings up another question. How prepared are most people to care for their elderly loved ones?
So that has a lot to do with the elderly loved ones themselves. So the thing I see in my practice is that people who have a positive outlook on aging, who are looking forward to their older adult years, they often do a really good job of planning, right? They financially plan, they plan for what they're going to do socially, they plan, where are we going to live, who is going to be close by, they do all the things. And if your aging loved one has done that, if they've planned well, then you are going to be in a really good position when you have to help them and make decisions because they did all that planning, right? They talked about it. They put all the things in place. Unfortunately, because we are such an anti-aging culture and we are bombarded with this aging is bad message all the time, and we all see how older adults can be discriminated against or can be looked down upon.
Yeah.
None of us want to, or very few of us want to admit that we're aging. We're not looking forward to it. We're dreading it. And that fear keeps us from doing the planning.
Yeah.
It keeps us from putting the things in place that need to be done. It keeps us from talking to our loved ones about, hey, here's what I want, and here's where the bank accounts are, and here's the decisions you need to make if I can't make them for myself. We're so afraid that we just kind of bury our heads in the sand and hope it all works out. And if that's what your aging loved ones have done, then you are going to be woefully unprepared because they haven't put anything in place. You guys haven't talked about it, and you're not going to know what's available. You're not going to know what the resources are. You're going to end up calling someone like me in absolute panic in a really stressful situation.
Yeah. Well, okay. I can speak from experience on all those things on many different fronts. So my grandparents were semi-prepared. They had no problem. I mean, my grandmother was, she was like 21 for her whole life. She never aged a day in her life, but they were somewhat prepared and they embraced aging and they were very active into their 80s. It wasn't until my grandfather had a stroke that he started slowing down, and they had some stuff set up. So it was a little bit easier on my mother, my aunt, and my uncle to take care of them into their last years or last days that they were with us. But they weren't fully prepared. Like, number one, they didn't have enough money for the care that they needed that long. I mean, it did last them, but it was tight. It was tight. So I think that's one thing that people don't really realize, that if you are going to live longer than you expect, what does that look like in terms of being financially prepared for that? Because I don't think a lot of people are. Now, on the flip side, my in-laws that I have today are not from this country. Their English is very limited, and they've been very successful though. A lot of immigrants that come to this country the right way are so incredibly successful and the most hardworking people I've ever met. And they've done very well for themselves. They own a lot of properties, but they have nothing set up legally. Nothing. So I'm always the one to bring it up, like, hey, we really need to consider putting this into a trust. What's this going to look like if one of them passes away? Like, you really need to start planning for all this. My father-in-law has got diabetes. He can barely walk. His English, like, he went to school here. He was a very successful engineer, but because of his diabetes and he's at the onset of dementia, he doesn't understand English that much anymore. Mm-hmm. So explaining something to him about the legal responsibility of when he leaves us, I don't want that to happen anytime soon, like, is very difficult. And so I keep telling my husband, like, you really got to try to do something to get things in line, because, even though you're an only child, it's just not going to be that much of a mess to clean up when one of them or both of them leaves you. And it's like, they are not prepared at all, like zero preparation, nothing is in line. So has anybody ever come to you with that kind of situation, and how you kind of can help them navigate something like that?
So, without knowing your father-in-law, do you know if he hasn't done any healthcare power of attorney? Nothing like that. Nothing. So unfortunately, if he is already diagnosed with dementia and he's far enough along in that dementia process that he really can't sign legal documents anymore, like, we don't know if he fully would be able to understand, especially if his English has faded away. At that point, there's actually not a lot you can do. Like, he couldn't move things around, set up a trust, and if decisions have to be made, you may have to pursue guardianship of him. Either, his wife can be the guardian, or his son can be the guardian, or the state can be the guardian, which
we don't want that.
Yeah. Most families don't, but it is, it is an alternative sometimes. So that, that's actually why it is so important to get those things in place ahead of time. Because what I hear from people so often is, oh, we'll do that stuff when it's time.
Yeah.
We'll do that stuff when we need it. And the actual reality is, everyone, if you're over the age of 18, you should have a healthcare power of attorney, a financial power of attorney, a living will, like all these things that say, if I cannot speak for myself, what do I want, right? Like, what kind of treatments do I want or not want? What kind of life do I want if I'm going to have to be on machines or things like that? But then also, who can make decisions on my behalf? Because if you don't have that paperwork in place, maybe the person that you want to have those decisions is going to make them, but maybe they're not. And
Yeah.
especially if you're in like complicated family situations where there's, maybe you don't get along with your
Oh,
closest living
geez. Yeah.
relative and things like that. Everyone should have those documents in place. There's no waiting until it's time, because anything can happen to any of us today such that we are incapacitated and not able to speak for ourselves. And at that moment, who's going to make those decisions for you? And again, if you haven't said who it's going to be,
Yeah.
maybe it'll be the person you want, but maybe it'll be the state appointing somebody instead. And that's not what you want.
No, certainly not. I think that that would just make things difficult on the family, as things you wrap up the estate or what have you. Luckily, he's still with it, and he's just very stubborn. We're starting to slowly take over the financial responsibilities because he got kicked out of a bank, and like because he went off and he's just not understanding things. So we had to clean that mess up, and it was such a pain in the butt because of all the different bank accounts or like income they have coming in. And it was just like, oh, I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
not doing this again. Tell him he cannot. So when we were there the last time, I was telling my husband, like, you really need to get power of attorney. Like, you need to
Yeah.
get that in place. And he just kind of like, shoot over his head. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. I'm not cleaning up another mess. I mean, I will, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, it's just getting to that point. So,
Yeah.
and his mother is very sharp, but she can't read or write English very well. She didn't go to school here. She just worked a lot of jobs to help them, survive. And, she relies on us heavily for everything, like text messaging, like anything she gets in the mail, she sends to us like, oh, what is this? So, she's very strong and she's very like with it. I mean, she'll probably live forever, but she just doesn't understand all that stuff. So it's hard for her to manage it. So I think that it's very prudent for people to get things in line if they have the opportunity to maybe influence their elderly loved ones to try to, like, if they don't have something, now's the time to do it. So you mentioned that usually people come to you when there's a mess, right? And that they
Hmm.
are freaking out. So what does that look like when they're, or what's the situation typically that they come to you and they need your help and they work with you?
The story is typically everything was fine with mom, let's say,
Yeah.
until, and then there's been some sort of event, a fall, a stroke,
Mm,
whatever it is. And now that loved one is in the hospital, and the adult children need to know everything about skilled nursing, Medicare, how to manage their parents' finances, how do we find somebody to take care of the house while she's in rehab, just all the things. They
yeah.
want, they need to know everything. They need a crash course in senior health care in an hour, that kind of, and they're so stressed out, right?
Yeah.
Because someone that they love is in the hospital and there's been this big event, and so they're already emotionally wrecked. And
Yeah.
now they also have to take on trying to learn or gain all this knowledge and take on this responsibility at the exact same time. We kind of joke that they're like cats with their claws in the ceiling,
Yeah.
with their back arched up.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that mean or condescending in any
No.
way. It's just that they are so stressed out. That's what they seem like. And our job is to kind of talk them through it, to take it piece by piece, right? How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Okay,
Yeah.
what do we need to do today? What do we need to get set up, for taking care of the house? What do we need to get set up for when she comes out of rehab? How are we going to pay for everything? What are her finances like? Do we have these documents in place so that we can make these decisions? Because most people, when they're in that moment, they don't even know what they don't know,
Right.
right? They don't even
Exactly.
know what they need to know.
Yeah.
And so we are trying to wrap around them and say, we know the stuff. Let's take this step by step.
Yeah.
Here's the first thing we need to do. Here's the second. Here's the third. And really handhold them and walk them through the process. So
Yeah.
that's 90% of the people who call. The 10% are the people who are pre-planning, who are thinking about, I want to know what the options are that are out there so that I can start shopping around for my retirement community, or I can find out financially how much I need to save or how much I need
Yeah.
to budget, or, all those kinds of ideas. And I love that. I love it when somebody comes and says, there's nothing urgent. We just are looking ahead and want to know what this is going to be like, and, how to plan for our future. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
then you're not trying to learn everything at once. I want to go back to one thing too, where you were talking about the conversations with parents. If
Yeah.
you are an adult child and you're trying to have this conversation with your parent, I would encourage you not to have it like this is what you've got to do in
Right.
order to get
Oh
your
yeah.
stuff straight. Because it should be an empowering conversation for the aging loved one, in the sense that if they want to have the very best older adulthood they can have, if they want to make sure that they get the best high quality care, then this is what we have to do. And so it's empowering, right?
Yeah.
You as the aging loved one are taking control of your future to say, this is what I want. This is where I want to go.
Yeah.
This is how I want to be taken care of. And I think reframing it that way to empowerment, rather than let's talk about how you're going to fall apart and need care and be a very
Right.
negative
Yeah.
conversation, can help people talk about it in a way that helps us move forward rather than shutting down.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that 100%. And I think I kind of came at it a little bit hard, which, if I bring it up again, I won't be like that. So thank you for setting me straight. So when someone wants to work with you, what does that look like in terms of, is there like is it by hour, or do you have like a set, like different levels of how to get them to help and
So
work through all that?
we have different kinds of clients. We have people who are coming in at that kind of urgent situation, which most people, that's where they start off. Sometimes people, they really just need the roadmap,
Yeah.
right? They just need an hour-long consultation. We're going to set them on the road and they're off. They
Okay.
can take care of it. Other people, because they don't have time to handle it themselves, right? The adult children are still working full time, raising their own kids.
Right.
They might hire us for a longer period of time to take over a lot of those things because they got to go to work, right? They
Yeah.
don't have time to make
Right.
all the phone calls and do all the things. And then there are other clients who we might come in kind of during a crisis, but then we continue to work with them day in and day out for weeks, months, years on end. Most of those folks, the older adult is near us,
Okay.
but the adult children live out of state. They live out of the country. They
Okay.
live somewhere else, so that they need feet on the ground. They need
Right.
somebody to go visit, to go with somebody, with their mom or dad, to doctor's appointments, to help coordinate all the care on a day-to-day basis because they're not close by. So, we have a mix of all those
Sure.
different kinds of
Okay.
clients.
So you can work with people virtually, and if they need that consultation. Okay,
Yep.
very cool.
Yep.
Let's like talk about your book really quick. Teenagers. I love the name.
Thank you.
Like, where'd that come from, and what does that mean?
So, teenagers is this word, right, that came about because I was trying to write a positive book on aging, because I really do think it's super important that our outlook on aging
Yeah.
be positive. There is a ton to look forward to as we get older.
Yes.
And that positivity will allow you to plan and to live longer, walk faster. There's all these positive effects of having a positive outlook on aging. And there's lots of research on this. This is not just me making it up. And in trying to write that positive book, I really struggled because there is so little positive language around aging. There's a lot of negative words. There's some kind of neutral ones like older adult or older person. And then maybe like elder is kind of respectful. My local senior center just changed its name to the Active Aging Center, which is trying to be more positive too, but I was struggling. And so I was sitting with a friend of mine and we were kind of throwing out, like, what can we find? And nothing. We came up with nothing. So she called her mom, who's in her 70s, and she said, "Mom, what do you and your friends want to be called?" And her mom said, "We call ourselves teenagers."
I love it.
Yeah, and it's a word that you'll actually find with a lot of local church groups that they use for kind of their active aging, seniors. And I thought it was perfect because keen means like you're keen to do things, you're keen to understand, you're interested in the world. And I think that really describes a lot of our older adults today. You know, they're not just sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair. They're not just sitting in front of the TV. They've got whole lives that they are participating in, that are much different than kind of our stereotypes about growing older.
Yeah, I love that. And what is the book about? What can people get from purchasing your book?
Yeah, so it's called Teenagers Telling a New Story About Aging. And it is a book to help you think about doing all these things you and I have just been talking about, planning ahead, getting all your stuff in order. And then it's a whole bunch of interviews with people who are what I would call teenagers, right? They are in their 60s and 70s. They are starting new businesses, running nonprofits, still working full time, doing all kinds of interesting things during a time period that we stereotypically think about everybody kind of slowing down and your health getting worse and those types of changes. And it isn't that these people are some sort of super senior or that they don't have any health problems. They do. They're normal people, but they are still so engaged with the world and so positive that I find that really inspiring. I mean, they're the kind of people I want to be when I grow up, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what the book is about. It's about helping you prepare, helping you have a positive outlook, giving you some inspiring stories of teenagers who are doing these things, and helping you think about your own ageism, right? Your own bias against getting older, the things we say, the things we think in our own head about our own aging.
Corinne, where can people find you, connect with you, learn more working with you, and purchasing your book?
So my website is CorinneAuman.com. So it's my name, and there you can find links to the book, and you can find out all about me. All the links to my social media are there, and you can get in contact with me there too.
Excellent. You guys, I'm going to put that link in the show notes. I'll put a couple of her social media handles as well. So if you are looking for some guidance or have more questions, go connect with Corinne, go purchase her book, and I'm sure she would love to have a conversation with you and get you on the right track. Corinne, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
Let go or hold lightly.
Oh, I like that.
Whatever your problem is, let it go. Or just hold it very lightly rather than like making it like make you clench all day long.
Oh yeah. That has been a practice that I've had to learn over my 48 years, because I used to like, and it's something that you have to work at and practice. But Corinne, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and the importance of, the beauty of aging and the importance of planning ahead for those years so you can enjoy them better, not only for yourself, but your family members as well. So thank you very much for the work that you do.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.